Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha, and welcome to Line of Sight, the weekly news roundup series for exclusively games. I've spoken quite a lot about bacon on this series, and I appreciate everyone's allowing me to indulge myself in a bit of a running gag. However, things are about to take a turn for the slightly serious. This weekend, the Quartering posted on Twitter that he was looking for people to come up with designs for 2 exclusively games t-shirts to help refill the coffers. Well, if any of you are a designer at heart and really want to create an exclusively bacon design, you can email thequartering@gmail.com to do so. Spread the word, tell your friends, and help show not only your love for bacon, but your love for games, and make some money while doing so. Also, don't forget to show your love for bacon right here by dropping a comment, hitting that like button, and sharing the video on their social medias. If you're interested in more news throughout the week, you can check out exclusivelygames.com for more news daily. Link is in the description down below. A pretty short introduction this week. I didn't have any witty puns or anything pop into my head, and I don't want to try and force that sort of thing because a forced joke is no joke at all, so let's go ahead and dive right into the business at hand. For this week, we have a PlayStation Network exploit that has been publicly outed that apparently Sony has been aware of for years. Electronic Arts somehow didn't get the memo and are having a difficult time coming to grips with their Bad Guys perception. And finally, there seems to be a bit of a kerfuffle due to some misperceptions and possibly misstatements by some developers over at Tinybuild in relation to GOG's DRM-free policy. And now that we're all queued up, let's get started. Normally, I tend to cover news surrounding PC gaming, or simply the industry at large, because that is what I'm accustomed to. My YouTube channel is a PC gaming channel, so it is a little outside of my normal wheelhouse. However, this is very much in relation to security, and it is something PlayStation gamers should absolutely be aware of. The website Multiplayer First reported on this story and outlined how, through compromised accounts, there is an exploit within the Sony PlayStation Network that allows bad guys doing bad things to be able to steal an account and purchase games for a separate PlayStation account. They also included the video that is on your screen from the YouTube channel Morteze Ramani, in which they show how this exploit functions to bypass the CVV requirements on the PlayStation Network. It involves obtaining the login credentials to someone's account, who then log in with that account and create a sub-account under the family settings with full permissions to be able to make purchases on the family account. They then log into the sub-account and begin buying up games with whatever stored account funds and saved payment methods are configured on the compromised account. Now, in the article they state, "It isn't an exploit with the consoles, it's an exploit with the network," one modder told us in a private message. When we asked the original poster of the method as to why this exploit is only coming out today in the form of a YouTube video, their response was rather shocking in stating that Sony implied they did not care unless it was made public. This exploit has allegedly been around roughly for 5 full years. The user had claimed that they had sent Sony the exploit in the past via their own hacking disclosure program, HackerOne. The user eventually ended up getting a response that informed them that the exploit served no security risk and was simple fraud. They then also showed that email response from Sony to HackerOne, the group that have attempted to bring this exploit to Sony's attention, in which Sony says, "After review, there doesn't seem to be any security risk and/or security impact as a result of the behavior you are describing. If you are able to leverage this into a practical exploit scenario, we will be happy to re-evaluate this report, but at this time, it does not present a significant security risk. This appears to be a fraud issue not covered by this bug bounty program. As a result, we will be closing this report. Nevertheless, we appreciate your effort and look forward to seeing more reports from you in the future." A Multiplayer First then later updated their article to showcase several additional examples of this issue happening out in the real world, like with LaTanya Williams from June 30th of this year on Twitter, who had her account compromised and had over $1,000 stolen from her. There was also this Reddit post from 11 months ago from the user Leadbelly2142, who had the same thing happen and had $175 worth of charges put onto their account using this method. Now, here is another from 7 months ago on the PS4 subreddit, and then another on the PS4 subreddit from 3 years ago. This is a significant problem that Sony is not properly addressing, but there are a few simple ways that any person can help protect themselves. First is make certain that you have two-factor authentication enabled on any publicly accessible account, which means anything that you log into online should have 2FA enabled. Also, be aware of phishing attempts made by email. One particular method that we're seeing on the rise involves doppelganger domains, where someone will register a domain with one letter changed in order to send out emails that will look perfectly legitimate to anyone taking a casual glance at the full email address being sent, in an effort to gain access to password information, signature data, even getting you to click on compromised links that can install malicious software or code on your device or computer. Another thing you could do to protect yourself is do not save your payment information on the PlayStation Network. I know it's a bit of an extra pain, but if you don't save it, bad guys doing bad things can't use it. So, two-factor authentication, be mindful of emails that you open, and especially be mindful of any links you click on, and don't save your payment information, and you should be on a much safer footing moving forward. Remember, this exploit has been present for years, so if you trust Sony to protect you, then you have only yourself to blame if and when your account becomes compromised. Our next story involves Electronic Arts, and they're battling with coming to grips that their corporation is not regarded at all well within the games industry, and that they're surprised by this realization. This information comes about from a lengthy interview on GamesIndustry.biz, in which the writer, Christopher Dring, interviews Executive Vice President Matt Bilbey. The title is a bit misleading, however, as while it is a quote from Matt Bilbey, easily over 90% of the article is a puff piece for the EA Originals project and EA's Origin Access, in which Electronic Arts published elevated indie titles, perhaps we can call these double A's, such as Unravel and Unravel 2, A Way Out, Sea of Solitude, and Fee or Fey or whatever, and EA apparently only recoups their costs, taking no profit from these selected titles. Now, in that article, Bilbey states, 25 years at EA, and I still struggle with the external perception that we're just a bunch of bad guys. We love making and playing games. Unfortunately, when we make mistakes on games, the world knows about it because it's of a size and scale. Bilbey continues, as we got bigger, there is the concern that we had become disconnected from new talent coming through. EA Originals is our opportunity to connect with that talent and those smaller ideas. When you are part of a big company, it's too easy to fall into the trap where when you see a game concept, it has to be big. The notion of actually coming up with a small, unique game ideas, we know from the work that we've been doing on our subscription business that gamers will play a FIFA or a Fortnite, they have one main franchise, but then they want breaks from those games to play something that's maybe 5 or 10 hours long. Despite the EA Originals program, which many consider to be little more than a cynical PR stunt, EA has a long and colorful past with gamers, including, of course, the Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA controversy, BioWare's Anthem, Mass Effect Andromeda, and being the only company to ever win the Consumerists' Worst Company in America 2 years in a row. During the second consecutive Golden Poo, the Consumerists' Chris Moran wrote, following last year's surprise Worst Company in America victory by Electronic Arts, there was hope that the video game giant would get the message. Stop treating your customers like human piggy banks, and don't put out so many incomplete and/or broken games with the intent of getting your customers to pay extra for what they should have received in the first place. And yet, here we are again, with EA becoming the first company to ever win a second Golden Poo from consumerist readers. We can still see several parallels from the Electronic Arts of 6 years ago and the Electronic Arts of today by going through that article, including accusations of rushing games out the door in an incomplete state, refusing to sell their products at a reasonable price, inadequate support on products after launch, and also Peter Moore, the chief operating officer at EA, releasing a non-apology in which it is stated, quote, in his misguided, misinformed missive, Moore says things like we can do better, while at the same time attempting to put the blame for its Worst Company in America success on a mysterious unseen cabal of homophobic right-wing blog commenters and people who don't like whichever football players are on the cover of Madden NFL. 6 years later, and it seems that the age-old adage really is true. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Our last story for the day comes to us via this Reddit user Snolus on the GOG subreddit discussing games published by Tinybuild not having supported deluxe editions and or soundtracks of their games on GOG.com. The Snolus outlines that the conversation itself was, quote, slightly bizarre as the Tinybuild games are actually up to date, which differs from what was told to them by the Tinybuild employee. Snolus did screen cap the conversation with a Tinybuild Community Manager in which they responded, as I stated prior, updating games on GOG is very unlikely because games are continuously torrented through DRM-free builds. We appreciate people who purchase our games via any platform, however, we have to be smart in business, and knowing that updated versions of games being stolen DRM-free is not smart business. This posted conversation did spark backlash against Tinybuild, which prompted Alex Nichiporchik, I probably didn't pronounce that right, to respond to the brewing dumpster fire. As such, he released the following statement. My name is Alex Nichiporchik, I hope I said that right, and I run Tinybuild. Pretty sure you've all seen the Discord post making rounds, where a company rep shares some views on piracy and DRM. Let me start by saying none of those views represent Tinybuild's position. What happened is that we didn't do proper training for our community management team on the subject matter, and the result blew up in our face. I personally grew up in the pre-DRM era and love having all my games and OSTs available anywhere, not requiring an online connection or a launcher. GOG has always been a great partner to work with, and in our intake for community managers, we simply didn't touch upon the incredibly important subject of DRM-free builds for partners and how they're supported. This is completely on us, and first thing next week, I'm gathering the whole team to brief them on our position and how to handle situations like these. I'd love to be a fly on the wall during that conversation. With TLDR, we didn't train our community managers properly and it backfired in our faces. Sorry for radio silence, as I wanted to personally dig into what was happening. We'll update all builds where possible. I've already requested a DRM-free deluxe edition build of Party Hard 1 and 2. Edit: to add to questions being asked in the comments regarding why some games don't always get timely DRM-free updates, it has everything to do with platform-specific dependencies. For example, most level editors are tied to online storage platforms. They handle storage, user profiles, often the GUI as an overlay. They're designed to integrate directly with things like Steamworks or console-specific systems. Making all of that work offline means designing local systems, which most smaller teams don't have the capacity to do. This doesn't explain DLC and OST being missing, though. It's something we're in the process of fixing, starting with Party Hard. First thing Monday, we'll go through all builds on GOG and update them where possible. I also want to figure out a more transparent way of communicating which build exactly you're getting to avoid confusion on store listings for DRM-free builds. And that is all well and good, but the simple fact is that Tinybuild games have been neglected on GOG up until this point, and while that is now being addressed, it is a situation that realistically probably shouldn't have ever come about to begin with. But that's all the time we have on this week's Line of Sight. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to hear more from me, I do plan on getting back to regular videos on my channel over at youtube.com/sidalpha as soon as I possibly can. So don't forget to follow me over there for more gaming news and industry commentary, and I do put a link to that in the description of these videos along with timestamps for any particular story. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am Sid Alpha, and I'll see you next time.